I recently had an email exchange with a viewer named Neil. He wrote to me about his struggle to find a modern, high-quality, audiophile grade internal sound card for a reasonable price in 2025. He's been using the HT Omega Eclairo for years, but after upgrading to Windows 11, the sound started dropping out. He needed a replacement internal sound card to fit his needs. And Neil's conclusion in his endeavor was, "It seems we're screwed these days, unless you want to spend $1,200 to $2,000. He was frustrated, almost desperate, looking for a true 7.1 discrete audio solution for his flight sim hobby. Now, his email reminded me of something I've been thinking about for a while now. The era of the internal sound card is effectively over. I originally planned to touch on this subject in my video about the Xonar AE a while ago. There was a whole section where I started rambling about the good old days of PC audio, about 3 minutes of nostalgia and history. Back then, every card felt like a leap forward, but today the age of giant steps is over. I cut it because it made the video feel too depressing and distracted from the main story. But Neil's email made me realize that this isn't a side note anymore. Back then you really had to understand your system on a bare metal level. No operating system quietly sorting things out in the background. And even if you did every setting correctly, there still was a good chance a game simply wouldn't start because of some unexplainable conflict in one of those settings. Was it messy? Absolutely. Was it frustrating? Well, without a question. But it was also very exciting. Every working game felt like a small victory. And this was the era when the 16-bit sound card was a dream and the 8-bit Sound Blaster still ruled most systems. And then came what I still consider to be the golden age of PC audio. Creators EAX added for the first time cinematic environmental effects to games, and Orioles A3D introduced the superior true positional 3D audio in games like Thief, System Shock and Half-Life. Now, I still remember hearing the actual footsteps behind me in Thief for the first time. I was, mind blown.
Hey, I'm going to the bear pits tomorrow. You want to come with? Couldn't pay. Hey, I'm going to the bear pits tomorrow. You want to come with? Couldn't pay me enough.
Cards built around those A3D technologies felt like a leap into a new dimension of sound. Remember the Diamond MX300 with the Vortex 2? This was, in my opinion, the peak of consumer 3D positional audio at the end of the 90s. And some say it hasn't been surpassed to this day. Gunshots from adjacent rooms sounded muffled, just as they would. Explosions had weight to them and direction. Reverbs and occlusion effects turned that flat stereo into something immersive and alive. Now, this was 3D audio at its best. Not the artificial effects we often get these days, but true spatial immersion. On the technical side, onboard codecs at the time were still very basic and heavily CPU dependent. They existed only for rudimentary sound output, for users who simply didn't care about audio. And that's why many internal sound cards were proudly labeled as APU or Audio Processing Unit, emphasizing that they offloaded audio processing tasks from the CPU and freeing up precious cycles for games to get higher FPS. Around that time, Nvidia released the Enforce 2 chipset with Soundstorm. Suddenly, you had a dedicated APU class audio integrated into your motherboard. Combined with a dual-channel memory controller, this delivered excellent gaming performance and audio quality at an aggressive price point. Now, for a brief moment, PC audio felt unrestricted, as if there were no hard limits anymore. Sadly, that innovation didn't last. Intel pushed Nvidia out of the chipset market, and sadly the Soundstorm quietly disappeared. Now, how ironic it is that nowadays it's Nvidia that keeps Intel afloat. And this is where things started to change, for the worse. Oriole Semiconductor, creators of those superior Vortex chips and A3D, was Creative's most serious rival. Creative responded aggressively, suing Oriole over patent claims that ultimately held no legal ground. And although Oriole won in court, their legal costs crippled the company, and in 2000, Oriole filed for bankruptcy and Creative acquired their assets, including the A3D technologies, without ever using them. So by that time, Creative emerged as the dominant force in PC audio. The Sound Blaster brand became the default choice for millions of users worldwide. To ensure that position, Creative again acquired any competitors left. Where once had been multiple companies pushing bold ideas, there was now a single dominant player. Some smaller firms folded, others were absorbed or left the PC audio space entirely. Innovation slowed to a crawl and risk-taking disappeared. Again, corporate greed killed innovation and progress. And as CPUs became faster and more advanced, the original justification for dedicated audio hardware, the APU, slowly disappeared. Audio processing no longer required specialized chips. Raw CPU power increased year after year in line with Moore's laws, freeing up those CPU cycles needed for audio processing. Motherboard manufacturers noticed this trend as well and started taking onboard audio more seriously. Better codecs, mainly from Realtek, cleaner PCB layouts, improved EMI shielding, higher bit depths and sampling rates. Not because audiophiles wanted it, but because it was cheap, easy to produce, and the CPU could handle it, and it was good enough for most users. Somewhere from nowhere, the safety net was pulled away from under Creative's feet. Even though the days of IRQs, DMAs and manual I/O addresses assignment were now long gone, audio drives are still very messy, resulting in unstable systems that reflected poorly on Microsoft. And then, with the introduction of Vista, Microsoft said enough, no more kernel level drivers. Everything had to conform to their driver model. A choice made not because it was elegant, but it was no longer acceptable. The result was that EAX stopped working, and so did other parts of the software. The reason to buy a dedicated internal sound card was now completely gone. One company did make a serious attempt to break Creative's dominance, and unlike many others, they actually succeeded. Asus entered the market with the Xonar lineup and focused on sound quality first. Cards like the Xonar D2, Essence ST, SDX2 delivered clean output stages, a solid to digital analog converter, and an exceptional audio for a more audiophile and gamer-oriented customer base. Together with software emulation for EAX, this was a very good choice. And why? Asus listened to what the customer wanted and answered. And for a while it worked. Creative was no longer the default recommendation. Asus proved that the internal sound cards could still matter. By the time Asus had established itself, the audio card market had already changed. The audience willing to buy affordable sound cards at all was shrinking fast because of the aforementioned reasons. Fewer users were interested in adding an extra audio hardware to their PCs. Onboard from now on was good enough for 99% of the users. Asus recognized this early, and instead of fighting a declining market, they shifted their focus elsewhere, back to GPUs, motherboards and other PC hardware, not because their sound cards failed, no, but because the market itself was collapsing. The age of large technical leaps was now definitely over. What remained was a market where the refinement rather than innovation was the norm. There wasn't enough money to be made, and so innovation wasn't rewarding. A market where even Creative introduced Realtek codecs on their sound cards. Now, this is also the moment where external USB audio interfaces offered more practical advantages. Electrical isolation to eliminate EMI. Platform independence because of USB standardization. Simpler setups. No drivers and increasingly better and better sound. And even superior quality over the internal sound card. Manufacturers followed demand and internal cards quietly disappeared from the mainstream. What remains today is a niche. Collectors, enthusiasts, hobbyists like yours truly keep the tiny sound market on bare life support. It's easy to explain the decline of the internal sound cards purely in a technical term. Faster CPUs, better onboard audio, the rise of USB. And it's also easy to blame first Intel for screwing Nvidia over the Soundstorm and Creative for screwing Oriole over A3D. It almost feels like their only goal is killing all innovation. But there's a deeper, simpler reason, and it's harder to accept. Innovation stopped paying off in the mainstream market. So in the end, the days of the innovative internal sound cards are now over. Now those internal sound cards have slipped into a niche market, but being a niche also has some advantages because the shareholders don't care about niches. It has opened doors, albeit tiny ones. Now one of those doors is opened by a generation that grew up wanting better sound. Those who once drooled while looking at cards like the Sound Blaster All-32 or 64, the ZXR or the Titanium HD, people who wanted to buy them but just couldn't afford it or justify the price at the time. But they are older now, they have a disposable income and they do want to invest in good audio. They can now choose dedicated external hardware that offers clear gains in sound quality, specialized digital to analog converters and amplifiers from companies like Fosse Audio, Burson Audio or EVGA and U Audio, products that focus on quality and demand rather than satisfying shareholders. And this has brought me a lot. The best audio quality in gaming and music and satisfying my every audio need. So in the end, Neil is right to be frustrated if he is still looking inside the PC. But the moment you stop looking for the internal sound card and start looking for good external audio, the picture completely changes. The internal sound card is gone, but that doesn't mean that good audio isn't.